Daniel Robinson disappeared on June 23rd in the far West Valley. He was last seen leaving his work site in Buckeye that morning. A month later, his Jeep was found in a ravine, but there was no sign of Daniel.
Hello beasts of YouTube. In today's video we are going to cover the strange disappearance of hydrogeologist Daniel Robinson. Daniel would disappear in the Arizona desert on June 23, 2021 around 9:15 to 9:30 a.m. He was assisting a remote drill site with a fellow co-worker, Ken Elliott, who also was the last one to see Daniel. Daniel is the youngest of 4 children and liked the outdoors, music, and traveling. He graduated from the College of Charleston in 2019, majoring in archaeology. He attended a course in Tucson after graduating and was soon offered a job by the engineering firm Matrix New World. He was close with his family and was said to have remained in constant contact with his parents and siblings. Daniel was described as a 5'8" African-American male weighing 165 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. Part of his right forearm and hand were missing as a result of a birth defect. Daniel and Ken had met for the first time that morning at the work site. The job site was near Sun Valley Parkway and Cactus Road in Buckeye. Elliott said everything seemed fine as they talked about the weather and the job. That was until a few minutes later, and Elliott said Daniel's demeanor changed from normal to distracted. Quote, "He was just looking off into the desert. He had a very, very distant look in his eyes," unquote, Elliott said. Quote, "Whenever he turned around again, I would look at him and look into his eyes. The first thing I thought was maybe it was drugs or something, but his pupils were not dilated. From the standpoint, everything appeared to be normal. Then I thought this was a medical condition or something. I wasn't too sure. I kept watching him, but he just kept turning around and looking off into the desert. Then he just turned around and walked back over to his Jeep. I just assumed he was going to get something out of his vehicle. And he opened the door, got in, sat down, put on his seatbelt. Then he looked at me and just waved at me, and backed up and took off." Not too long after Daniel took off in his Jeep, Elliott called and informed his coworkers what had happened. Elliott assumed that Daniel wasn't feeling well and would call in sick, but hours later and no one had heard from Daniel, Elliott did some investigating. He followed Daniel's Jeep tracks in rain-soaked dirt until he reached a T-junction, where you can return to Phoenix or go the other way, which leads deeper into the Saharan Desert. The tracks showed Daniel taking the turn that led deeper into the desert. Quote, "When I saw that, my heart sank, because it just told me that he wasn't going home," unquote, Elliott said. Quote, "Something was really not right," unquote. Daniel's dad, David Robinson, and his family that were in South Carolina became concerned when Daniel didn't check in that day, which was unusual for him. Quote, "We didn't know what was going on. We know Dan doesn't ignore his phone calls," unquote, Daniel's dad said. Quote, "I can imagine his phone ringing for I think almost a day, and then finally I guess the phone died, or somebody cut it off. After that point, it goes straight to the voicemail," unquote. Daniel was reported missing the same day he was seen at work to the Buckeye Police Department. Then the search was on, led by Buckeye Police, using UTVs, drones flying overhead, boots on the ground, and cadaver dogs, along with assistance in the air from Phoenix Firebird helicopters and Civil Air Patrol. Family members would travel from the East Coast to Arizona to join in on the search. The area covered 70 square miles. Daniel's Jeep was found by a rancher, Brandon Shelton, close to a month after Daniel's disappearance, July 19th, in a spot that had already been searched, but helicopter and drone searchers failed to locate it. The Jeep was on its side with significant damage at the bottom of a 20-foot ravine with its airbags deployed. Police said that at the time of the crash, a seatbelt had been worn. The Jeep had Daniel's phone, wallet, credit cards, keys, and bottled water. His clothes he was last seen wearing were also found nearby. A t-shirt, jeans turned inside out, shorts, orange work vest, boots, and 2 mismatched black socks. One of the socks was Nike and the other was Adidas. a private investigator the family hired found another black Nike sock 3 miles away in the desert. The rancher Shelton was convinced that the car had only been in the ravine for a short while before he stumbled upon it. It was clean, Shelton told Daily Mail, and my cows would have found it. Cows are inquisitive creatures and would have licked it. Shelton then pointed to one of Daniel's size 11.5 Red Wing work boots that was stuck under the Jeep. Quote, "That makes no sense," he said. "If you were delirious and ripped off all your clothes and wandered into the desert, you wouldn't stick one of your shoes under the car. My personal theory is that someone deliberately wrecked that vehicle out there." Unquote. The ravine was searched after finding the Jeep by ground and by air by the Department of Public Safety range helicopter, but there was no traces of Daniel. Daniel's family hired a private investigator, Jeff McGrath, who was a former police officer, the same day the Jeep was found. He conducted private searches with help of volunteers. Daniel's family and McGrath don't believe the Buckeye Police Department conducted a thorough investigation in Daniel's disappearance. As soon as Daniel's father arrived in Arizona, they handed over Daniel's clothes, other possessions, and Jeep. McGrath said, "Surely these are items of evidence if a crime is found to have been committed." Once Daniel became missing, when we realized that, I think the quick action wasn't quick enough, David Robertson said in a CNN interview. A report released by the Buckeye Police Department into Daniel's disappearance shows the family requested a helicopter search on June 24th, a day after Daniel went missing, but was declined until June 25th. The report also showed Tempe police were dispatched to check Daniel's apartment on June 24th, but did not enter the residence. Police did not go in until about 2 weeks later, on July 7th. Police also did not contact Civil Air Patrol, which are volunteers who conduct air searches, until July 7th as well. David Robinson believed that the Petito investigation helped in giving more exposure to his son's case. He also believes, due to public pressure, the police have been providing updates on his son's case. McGrath, who specializes in accident investigations using GPS data, was able to find that the Jeep got into multiple accidents after Daniel's disappearance, before it ended up in the ravine. McGrath said evidence from the vehicle strangely shows that it had crashed. The airbags deployed, then drove another 11 miles and was involved in another crash. The first crash happened 4 hours after he went missing, based on GPS data. There was also some paint transfer from the vehicle. After the first crash, it's unknown where the vehicle was taken next. Mr. McGrath, using the airbag control module, said that after the airbags were deployed and the ignition was turned on at least 46 more times during the initial 11 miles put onto the Jeep.
We have a gap in time, and we don't know where he went, what was going on at that point. By looking at the photographs, it doesn't match the area. Sometimes those could be a staged event, and this looked like a staged event to me.
He added, saying the damage to the vehicle appeared to show that it was hit above the windshield. It looks like a bat or pipe, or it could be a larger rock, anything blunt. No blood was found in the Jeep, and police believe there are no indications of foul play. One thing that media outlets seem to leave out when reporting on this case is Daniel's interaction with a woman on June 12th who he had met while delivering alcohol to for Instacart, a side job he had. The woman, Katelyn, whose last name was redacted in reports, and her friend invited Daniel into their home in an Arizona suburb. The police report said Katelyn said she believed Daniel was very nice, and she and her female friend asked Daniel if he wanted to hang out with them. She added, saying she thought he was harmless, as he only had one arm and was short in height. Daniel and Katelyn exchanged numbers, but she insists that nothing else had happened. Katelyn said she and her female friend were drunk, and that looking back on it, she wouldn't have invited the stranger into her home. With only a brief exchange of messages between them, within a week, Daniel showed up to her house unannounced. Daniel texted Katelyn saying, "I couldn't stop thinking about you." As time went on, he was texting, "I love you." Katelyn tried to rebuff him, saying, "Honestly, you showing up my house unannounced made me extremely uncomfortable," and replying, "I don't see us hanging out anytime soon." Just the next day, he showed up to her house again. Katelyn told him to text. This isn't normal nor acceptable. If someone has expressed that you made them uncomfortable, you need to back off. Daniel would reply saying, "Do you hate me?" Katelyn would text back, "I don't hate you, but please leave me alone." It would take him 15 hours until he would respond with his final text to her. "The world can get better, but I'll have to take all the time I can, or we can, whatever to name it. I'll either see you again or never see you again." 18 hours later, he showed up to the remote drill. McGrath believes Daniel was upset about Katelyn's rejection and went on an all-night video game binge. Then, when he turned up for work in the morning, he was so tired he deliberately drove into the desert to take a nap where he wouldn't be found. McGrath went on to say, "At that point, I think somebody, not a good person, found him. I can't imagine what they did with him, but I believe his vehicle was crashed a couple of times and that his final rest was at the bottom of the ravine." The police don't believe it was anything with foul play, and even with the wreckage of the Jeep found no blood. They are looking to the public for any information in the case. Daniel's family are trying to hold out hope and trying to keep the searches going, but his father believes he may have been met with foul play. Mr. Robinson believes his son's Jeep that was found 2 miles away with no blood or bodies was dumped. It was returned to an area near where we were searching. My theory would be to try to throw us off. Buckeye Police Department, they did a search. They didn't find a vehicle. And also my search team had been out there. They hadn't seen that vehicle, he added. Mr. Robinson is clinging on to one specific personal theory. "I believe that, somehow, God's going to bring my son back alive." Mr. Robinson has been doing everything he can to find his son. They have a Gofundme to support continuing searches that I'll link in the description, and that has surpassed its goal by a good amount, reaching over $150,000. There's also a website that they have set up for Daniel that I'll also link in the description, where you can find where to report any helpful tips. You can also sign a petition that will help change the police's theory that no foul play occurred and start looking at the case in a criminal matter. What do you think happened to Daniel? Do you side with the police and believe there isn't enough there to constitute foul play? Or do you side with the family and the private investigator who believes something more dark may have happened? Or do you believe something entirely else may have happened? Let me know in the comments, and hopefully the family will find closure to this strange disappearance. If you have any important information to this case, remember to look in the description to find where to report tips. Please like, subscribe, and share, and be safe out there.
We're not going to stop. We're going to try to spread the word far as we can. I had to find my child. I had to find my son, so